Bucknutters. It is Thursday, July 20th, 2017. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. I'm back this week. Tuesday it was Dwayne. Thursday, my good friend Steve Wiltfong, Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Steve, overcast in the Gem City. How goes it in Indianapolis?
Daniel, same here, but it's just scorching hot. Going to be in the 90s today. Went to a football scrimmage last night. It was 94, 95 on my car as I was driving over there, but honestly, I actually didn't feel too bad on the field. But I'm ready to get to Friday Night Lights this weekend. I'm hoping Mother Nature keeps the thunder and the lightning elsewhere. I know it's in the forecast in Indianapolis. Scared to look at the Columbus forecast. I just, if I don't look, I feel better about it because I don't know. But I know the weather from here typically gets sent that way. So I'm hopeful that we have another great Friday Night Lights because it's my favorite camp, my favorite college camp that I go to every year. Just the people are nice, the fans, the Bucknut readers, the Ohio State fans are fun to be around. And then obviously there's great talent on the field and a great atmosphere inside the shoe.
We're going to go into great detail about Friday Night Lights. We will, of course, have Steve Wiltfong and Bill Kurlick there, a dream team to cover it for you guys. One of the guys who will be there, we're not sure if he'll work out yet because of a recently rolled ankle, is Jeremy Ruckert, the five-star tight end out of New York. Before we get started, I thought it might be a little bit interesting for everyone to hear this. The way it works for commitments is everyone knows, especially a guy like Ruckert, when he's going to commit because he gave us the date at a time. But then there's kind of a scramble among those who cover recruiting to get a pre-write, which means you know ahead of time who the individual is going to commit to, and he gives you some quotes. That's how that miracle story comes out so quickly with quotes. Steve Wiltfong was the man when it came to Ruckert. He got that story. I thought it might be a little bit interesting, Steve, if you could, without giving away your trade secrets, explain to him the process for that leading up to you getting the scoop in front of the nation.
Well, I've been able to do that for a long time, get the pre-write. I've been doing it for many years now, back when it really wasn't a thing to do. But I was just fortunate that Jeremy and I clicked at some point, and he trusted me enough to give it to me beforehand, and was able to write a good story about it to complement the cool video he did. And then obviously we were able to have a good read ready to go on Bucknuts, which was a pretty cool story because we know Urban Meyer doesn't miss a phone call for recruiting, even if it's on his anniversary, driving to wherever he was going with his wife. Incoming call, Jeremy Ruckert. Coach Meyer takes it. Ruckert has his family with them. It's on speakerphone all the way around. Ruckert commits. Officially, Urban and Shelley Meyer get fired up. Ruckert's parents are obviously, and his family are fired up. And Coach Meyer put so much time into recruiting Jeremy. They didn't take a tight end last cycle, as we all know. And I wrote an article yesterday saying there's really no more closers in college football recruiting. I'm getting to the point where I roll my eyes when people call Urban Meyer a closer. I understand what they mean, but Urban Meyer, he gets stronger in the late innings, or when it gets close to commitment time. But he's a presence from the opening pitch. He's a starting pitcher, and that's where recruiting's trending. Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll, among the pioneers in that and raising the ante for what the head coach's role is on the recruiting trail, and you're seeing a lot more of it now. And I think the closer is a dying breed when you're talking about staffs that have a chance to win 14 games. That's the ultimate goal, to win 14 or to win 13 in a title if that's good enough, that year, whatever. 13 or 14. And yeah, there'll still be coaches out there that'll remain closers, but I just don't think their ceiling is 13 or 14 wins then. So if you're happy being 12-2 because you miss out on 3 or 4 pivotal recruiting years a year, which adds up to 12 to 16 players on your roster if you take a 4-year stretch of losing 3 to 4 pivotal recruiting battles, on top of the board guys, that dents your roster and keeps you from winning 14. And so you still have a couple elite closers and Nick Saban and Jimbo, and that doesn't mean that kids don't know who they are to the end, but their presence isn't the same as a Urban Meyer or a Dabo Sweeney, from start to finish. But that's all right, because one conversation with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher can completely change your thought process of what you had before. But those guys, there's not going to be many more like them. They already have championship rings. They've sent so many guys to the league. They can come in when they want. And Urban Meyer technically could do that too, but he doesn't. That's not his style. And that's why you're seeing Ohio State winning recruiting battles for Jeremy Rucker, why you see them going into Georgia and Florida and Texas and beating State U and all these SEC programs for kids. Urban sets the tone at the top, and your coaching staff follows. And so I think at a lot of places where the head coach isn't setting the tone, those schools may only have 3 or 4 good recruiters then, because some of the other guys don't take it as seriously as they should because the head coach isn't setting the tone at the top. And Luke Fickell really, when I spent some time with Coach Fickell earlier this summer, and we talked about it on Bucknuts 1 and 5, he eloquently said it in a way that now I can say it to people on the radio or this program is, I always knew the head coach set the tone, but him enunciating it really, it's clear. And so now you have a guy like Luke Fickell who's eventually going to be at a major college program recruiting his ass off, from the top. And you see DJ Durkin doing that at Maryland. He's worked for Urban. He's worked for Harbaugh. Maryland's got the number 17 class in the country right now, going to be in the top 25 for 2 years in a row for the first time in God knows how long, and PJ Fleck, that's the next wave. Tom Herman at Texas. Lincoln Riley spent his first 3 days when he took over at Oklahoma taking and receiving phone calls. The closer's gone, Dan. These guys need to be able to go 9 innings and get stronger as the game goes on.
Yeah, the concept of the closer, or the perception that, the coach just comes in, smiles and shakes hands and gets the commitment.
How it used to be.
Certainly, yeah, and it certainly minimizes, like you were saying, the effort level that's put in by someone like Urban. To me, if you're now saying the closer types, that's actually borderline lazy.
Well,
it's lazy.
Like
I get that Saban could do it.
Right. And he's not late. He'll still Skype, and he gives the offer and Skypes and talks. But Urban's talking to Jeffrey Okuda a few times a week, right? Gone are the days where Lou Holtz would walk into your living room in the late 80s and early 90s and get mom on board and get your paperwork signed,
Right.
But it don't happen like that anymore, That's how every school was recruiting back then. So, the most personable head coach, your John Kennedy type coach, comes in and wows everyone. He's a magician in the living room, and then you hear the stories. Well, Lou Holtz got it done, Well, now these kids are connecting with the head coaches throughout the process. It's just Nick Saban's got such star power. Jimbo Fisher's star power, Big Blink. They can still be of the old guard, and they got great recruiters on the staff. And then obviously Alabama evaluates at such a high level as well that they shrink their board. They shrink their board, and then they have so much clout they can get 75-80% of their board because they have such success winning SEC titles, national titles, and NFL draft. They shrink their board by great evaluation, and then they zero in on guys. They have good recruiters on staff, and then Saban closes them. Just says, look, Najee Harris, we're done messing around, brother. You can take your visits the whole cycle, but you can come play at the University of Alabama where our running backs get drafted every year, and you're going to play for a championship. All right, coach, I'm coming.
Yeah, I don't think it's as overt as this, but it's said that in college basketball recruiting right now that Duke and Kentucky don't recruit, they select. There's a difference. And I'm not saying Ohio State and Alabama are to that point, but it's close. And it's good. That's a very cool inside window there into, one, how you get a scoop, and two, why Ohio State is providing us so many scoops. Let's talk Friday night lights real quick. The name that has popped up that's kind of surprised, I would think everyone a little bit because it surprised me, is Tommy Togiai. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. As we get into another quest for a huge interior lineman west of the Mississippi that I think will end up at one of the major Pac-12 schools. Crystal Ball says USC and Washington battle. They are now in it for Tommy Togiai if he's coming out here. What's your vibe? Is this another of a Jay Tufele situation where I get my hopes up and then they're dashed?
Well, Jay Tufele was a deal where he just went to USC and they closed him, similarly, to what's, Clay Helton, USC. And Clay Helton's a good recruiter now that's available as well throughout. And then USC's just got that West Coast closing power. But, Tommy's coming to Ohio State. Anytime a young man visits Ohio State and spends a lot of time on campus, Ohio State's got that opportunity to be a finalist. They're gonna make him feel really good about the Buckeyes. I just think that this is a visit that if the young man plans on taking official visits, he'll return to Columbus as well. So, yeah, it's a good thing for Ohio State. And one of these days, I think they will land the poly defensive tackle from the West. Just keep swinging, keep chopping wood, and we'll see what happens here with Tommy. They did land Haskell Garrett out of Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, so it's not like they've gone over on this defensive tackle Polynesian West Coast deal. They've won some, lost some, and going to try and win another one here with Tommy Togiai, who's a U.S. Army All-American, number 2 defensive tackle in the country per 24/7 Sports. And I'm excited to see him work out.
Yeah, he looks like a man mountain. That's an interesting one right there. Another man mountain that could be in attendance, and I said I'm not so sure about this guy's recruitment anymore. I do think he'll end up at Ohio State. I'm wondering if he likes recruiting a little too much. Jackson Carman, what's your vibe?
Well, him and Micah Parsons are obviously the big ones. You want to see him walk inside the shoe and be there if you're an Ohio State fan. Carman could end up visiting Clemson, but sounds like when you read Bill Kurlick's Insider, it's looking good for him to be inside the shoe Friday. Micah Parsons, those are 2 guys that I have crystal ball, 2 5-stars, crystal ball to Ohio State. And then Emory Jones coming back, for Friday Night Lights. That's big as well. As he's made some rounds and he's talking to other schools, and, he's Ohio State's longtime quarterback commit dating back to around this time last year. And so you've invested a lot of time and energy into this young man, and you don't want to see him sign elsewhere at this point.
What's your vibe on
Ohio
that?
State a lot, and he's been to Ohio State.
But what's your vibe
recently?
You think he's a real good candidate?
The thing is, I've covered thousands of recruitments. These kids have only gone through it once, so sometimes I internally get a little judgmental when I shouldn't. Sure. But I look at a guy that's your quarterback, and I hold quarterbacks to a different standard than I do other positions, whether that's fair or not. And when you're a quarterback at a place like Ohio State, it takes a certain kind of personality to win 14 and get this group of guys to rally around you and be the leader within a culture that just demands excellence in the weight room and in the meeting room and then on the field. And I've seen that. I don't have question marks with Tate Martell in that regard. He's a leader and a winner and a ultra competitor and extremely confident. I don't have a question mark with what all returns on Dwayne Haskins have been good, and all on Joe Burrow. And then obviously, JT Barrett's a leader of men, so we'll see with Emory. That would be my, you see him taking these visits, and, the Alabama visit seemed to be a big surprise, again, but he's only a teenager. We'll see what he's like when he gets into college.
We appreciate.
I don't even know if I gave you an answer there.
No, listen. And I agree with you in this respect 100%. I think it is different for the quarterback, and it sends a poor message if he really is visiting places without the staff knowing. That's a bad sign.
But then you come back to Ohio State 4 times. That's a good sign, right? So it's recruiting.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Who knows? But I'm just saying, like, can this guy win you a national championship? Do these things mean anything to that? I don't know. You know, I mean, my thought process has only been like this for a couple of years, so I don't have any back end data to tell me these are real red flags or not.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is it probably doesn't matter, but it's not a great look, and it doesn't feel great as you're riding through it. And I think your point on the fact that it's a quarterback is holds a little more weight when he does that, because the quarterback, especially one like Jones who commits, prior to the first snap of his junior season in high school, you're supposed to be the Pied Piper at that point on some level, and I know he's done somewhat of that. But
and he took a lot of visits. He took a lot of visits before he went to and committed to Ohio State. Tennessee was the early leader there. Georgia offered. He had really looked into those programs and then chose Ohio State. And then you got Florida State popping up in the spring, and now Alabama. So we'll see.
It's certainly a who's who of schools, so that's good. We appreciate Steve stopping by. Don't forget, Steve and Bill and the entire Bucknut staff will be there with bells on with the best coverage of Friday Night Lights you can get anywhere. Have a good one, Bucknutters.
Appreciate it, guys. See you Friday.